Oh, baby, let's go. We're talking about a pretty interesting radio hit. This is involving two teams that are actually playing today, funnily enough. So we have ourselves a Canadiens and a Rangers game that's going to start at 2 p.m. PST. And unfortunately, that's like 4 hours from now. But even though there's a game, I don't want to talk about that game. That game's going to come and go. There's a Canucks game on at the same time. I have my own personal hockey game later in the afternoon, so I'm kind of busy today. But when it comes to this idea that we're making this video about, it comes to us from Norman Flynn, who made an appearance on BPM Sports Radio, which is a French news outlet, or not necessarily news outlet, but sports journalism news outlet in Quebec. They've got 3 stations, 91.9 Montreal, 100.9 Quebec, and 96.5 Gatineau, and there was a segment yesterday from their show that got a whole bunch of people talking. Everybody was going out there discussing this Norman Flynn radio hit, and essentially the reason for that is because he brings up 2 first overall picks. Take a look at the tweet over here. If he were the GM of the New York Rangers, Norman Flynn would trade ALEXIS Lafreniere to get his hands on JURAJ SLAFKOVSKY. What do you think? And attached is the little video. It's 100, or not 100, my goodness, I am so bad at reading numbers. It's 1 minute and 8 seconds long. It's all in French, so you kind of need to understand the language to be able to listen to this. But essentially, what Flynn does is he talks about ALEXIS Lafreniere. He talks about the way that he's progressed and how if he were the Rangers GM, he would want to trade Lafreniere away to get a guy like Slavkovsky in return. Now, this is problematic for a few things. Firstly, you have the Rangers fans that are looking at this saying, wait a minute, some Quebec insider would trade away Lafreniere for Slavkovsky? Sorry, man. Lafreniere is ours. We think he's still got potential. We still think he's going to be good. We got to keep this guy. And then you have the Canadiens fans saying, wait a minute, this Quebec insider is insinuating the idea of trading away Slavkovsky for a bust like ALEXIS Lafreniere? And okay, that's very harsh, I get that. But there are so many people I saw in the replies to this tweet, on the quote tweets in the comment section of the subreddit, who were all kind of saying, wait a minute, like, why is this even being talked about? Come on, bro. Why? Isn't this the dude that said that the Canadiens should trade away Nick Suzuki for Wayne Simmons or whatever? Like, come on, bro, get out of here. And I wanted to go over this idea just in theory, not because it's going to happen. You're not going to see a trade of the first overall picks like that, especially this soon after the draft. Nor are you going to see any other action between New York and Montreal, except for the game later today. But when it comes to this idea, Flynn is obviously coming from a few different angles here. Firstly, from the New York Rangers perspective, even though ALEXIS Lafreniere is a guy that many Rangers fans still kind of want to see grow into the player we thought he could be when he was drafted in 2020, there are still some concerns as to whether or not he is going to be able to do that with the Rangers. Their left wing depth is pretty solid, and when it comes to Lafreniere, his overall development has been stunted the past few years in an unfortunately similar fashion to other forwards in the Ranger system who have had similar struggles. You got guys like Vitaly Kravtsov, Capo Caco, Lias Anderson. ALEXIS Lafreniere is the newest guy in those bunch of guys. And even though there has been some concern, the growing sentiment I've seen amongst Rangers fans is that as long as the Rangers give him opportunities, the fans would love nothing more than to see Lafreniere prosper. It's just, when it comes to the idea of a trade, okay, if he's going to go out there, get scratched, if he's not actually going to be given time, you might as well see a trade. You know, give the guy an opportunity to really develop elsewhere and away from a New York system that has not had the best luck developing forwards the past few years. It just would hurt a lot to rip off that Band-Aid. Now, when it comes to the perspective of Lafreniere specifically going over to Montreal, I know a lot of Canadiens fans would jump at that idea in isolation. Not for Slavkovsky, not for anything, just say, oh, should the Canadiens go after Lafreniere? And that's an idea that I think some Canadiens fans might be like, okay, well, we know there have been problems with Lafreniere and his mobility, but bringing a hometown boy kid over to Montreal in that kind of fashion, first overall, not developing properly, getting sent over to the Canadiens in a similar fashion to a guy like, for example, Kirby Dach, who is also going through struggles in the Chicago system. Hey, sign me up for that right there, baby. I know a lot of Canadiens fans would be super ecstatic if the team acquires a guy like ALEXIS Lafreniere. The only problem is, if you're giving away Slavkovsky to do that, all of a sudden it becomes a lot more sour than initially discussed. Because JURAJ SLAFKOVSKY is a guy that, even though he hasn't had the same production like a guy like McDavid or Matthews, or heck, even second overall guys like Laine or Eichel when they stepped into the NHL right away, JURAJ SLAFKOVSKY is still a guy that is so young, he is so raw, he's developing honestly pretty alright at the National Hockey League level so far, and it's not really like Canadiens fans are expecting anything more out of him in the immediate short term. If you trade away SLAFKOVSKY for Lafreniere, you're arguably not really gaining all too much in terms of your on-ice product. I mean, SLAFKOVSKY was drafted, 2 drafts after ALEXIS LAFRENIERE? He's 3 years older than the guy too, or 3 years younger than the guy as well. So if you trade away a guy like SLAFKOVSKY, who is 18, for ALEXIS LAFRENIERE, who is now, 23 years old, not only is your team not really improving all too much, but you're also not really improving in the short-term future as well. ALEXIS LAFRENIERE right now is 21 years old. If you take a look at what JURAJ SLAFKOVSKY is going to be when SLAFKOVSKY is 21 years old, I'd debate that JURAJ SLAFKOVSKY at 21 is probably a lot better than what ALEXIS LAFRENIERE is at 21 right now. Now, you could say, oh, what about ALEXIS LAFRENIERE when ALEXIS LAFRENIERE is 24 years old? Maybe he's a lot different then, and who knows, maybe he is. But there is still going to be a lot of development to go through between now and then, because that is a product of 3 years down the line. There's a lot more development that still needs to be done, and who knows if the Rangers are even going to be able to do that properly. This has been discussed at length, the Lafreniere problem, on this YouTube channel, in the comment section of all the videos that we have on this YouTube channel, on Reddit, Twitter, Instagram, Discord. It's everywhere. Rangers fans have been conversing about Lafreniere for ages, and even though it would be a nice reclamation project for a team like Montreal or Vancouver, for example, to get this kind of a guy, if you get somebody like SLAFKOVSKY in return, I don't know if that's really plausible, you know? Like, I feel like teams like Montreal, these guys are trying to sell at the deadline. They're not trying to get rid of young guys. Why would they do that? ALEXIS LAFRENIERE, being a hometown guy, having some struggles and being in the position he's at right now, is absolutely not enough of a reason for the Canadiens to say, okay, well, we can trade away JURAJ SLAFKOVSKY to get him. If it was like Mike Hoffman, add on maybe a few extra picks and some C, B minus tier prospect, then okay, I could see the Montreal Canadiens making that sort of a move if Lafreniere is coming back the other way. And if you're able to retain salary on whatever's going out, it would make a ton of sense for the Rangers as well. If this is a team that is trying to acquire assets for the now, if you're trading away Lafreniere for SLAFKOVSKY, I mean, as we said, I don't really know if you're improving all too much. You're really just trying to get out of that Lafreniere situation, and it's so obviously more beneficial to your party that the Canadiens would not say yes to that idea. And so Norman Flynn, the guy who went out there on the radio and talked about this, I'll leave a link in the description to his video. The video was on the BPM Sports Radio Twitter, so it's all on there. Again, it is in French, so if you want to understand it, you kind of have to learn the language, pick up a French dictionary or something while you're at it. But either way, tell me the comments your thoughts about this idea. JURAJ SLAFKOVSKY and ALEXIS LAFRENIERE. Could you see them as potential trade bait for each other? The Montreal Canadiens side, I don't think would be interested in doing this. However, I do think they would be interested in the player, just not for SLAFKOVSKY. And for the Rangers, I don't really know if this is something that would align with their perspective and views either, because SLAFKOVSKY doesn't really help them tremendously, more so than a guy like Lafreniere. And when it comes to the hope and the expectations, the growth, all of the stuff that Lafreniere has built with the Rangers and their fans, I'm not too sure if this is a trade that they would want to see either. Like, all things considered, I think in the year 2026, it's probably, I don't know if it's guaranteed, but it's maybe at this point a little more safer to say that SLAFKOVSKY is going to be the more polished and productive player at the NHL level. But I mean, ALEXIS Lafreniere, all he needs is some mobility training, and then he's going to be pretty great. So who knows what's going to happen between now and a few years down the line. But for now, let me know in the comments your thoughts about this idea. Lafreniere for SLAFKOVSKY, New York to Montreal. Because both of these guys are playing in a game against each other later today, this might be a great opportunity to get some scouting, some preliminary visual aid in your conversations in the comments of this video. So talk to the comments your thoughts. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.